Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I am Muneeb Hamid with the news of this hour. Let's begin with the headlines first. Pakistan is observing National Defence Day today to pay tribute to its armed forces for thwarting India's attack and safeguarding Pakistan's sovereignty in the 1965 war. In his message, President Arif Alvi said Pakistan makes serious efforts towards securing peace in the region, but India keeps hostile designs. While Prime Minister Imran Khan said in 1965 the nation and military proved that it's not the size but the courage and devotion that matters the most. In Rawalpindi, Chief of Army Staff General Qamar Javed Bajwa laid wreath at the Martyrs Monument at the General Headquarters. Islamabad has summoned a senior Indian diplomat to register a strong protest over ceasefire violations along the line of control. The Foreign Ministry says an unarmed civilian was seriously wounded by India's unprovoked firing in Rakchikri sector. The United States Special Envoy Zalmay Khalilzad is in Qatar to push for intra-Afghan negotiations. The U.S. State Department says all sides have taken steps to remove obstacles for talks and now must seize the opportunity for peace. Earlier, the Taliban also said their senior delegation is in Qatar to resolve issues and a date for the talks will be announced soon. Turkey has warned Greece of painful consequences if it does not enter talks over the eastern Mediterranean Sea. Talking to reporters in Ankara, President Recep Tayyip Erdogan said Turkey has political, economic and military might needed to cast off immoral maps. The two NATO members have been at odds over territorial claims in the resource-rich waters. Mexico says it has recorded nearly 123,000 extra deaths during the pandemic, along with another 67,000 confirmed COVID-19 fatalities. Meanwhile, India has registered 1,065 deaths and more than 90,000 infections overnight, the world's highest single-day surge so far. In Pakistan, the outbreak continues to decline as the country recorded only 2 deaths overnight, while the active cases have reduced to 6,269. Globally, the virus has claimed more than 879,000 lives and infected over 26.9 million people. News coming in detail after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Pakistan is observing National Defence Day today to pay tribute to its armed forces for thwarting India's attack and safeguarding Pakistan's sovereignty in the 1965 war. The day began with a 31-gun salute in Islamabad and 21-gun salutes in the provincial capitals. Special ceremonies were held at the mausoleum of the founder of the nation, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, and the Pakistan military's general headquarters. In his message, President Arif Alvi said Pakistan makes serious efforts towards securing peace in the region, but India keeps hostile designs. While Prime Minister Imran Khan said in 1965 the nation and military proved that it's not the size but the courage and devotion that matters the most. In Rawalpindi, Chief of Army Staff General Qamar Javed Bajwa laid a wreath at the Martyrs Monument at the General Headquarters. Later today, Alvi will confer military awards upon officers and soldiers at the President House. As Pakistan celebrates its Defence Day on September 6th to mark its valiant rebuke in the 1965 war against India, the conventional warfare between the two nuclear-capable neighbouring countries has transcended from battle gear into many other trajectories. More in this report by Indus News correspondent Isa Naqvi.
On September 6th, Pakistan commemorates the incredible defense against Indian infiltration in the 1965 war. Which left New Delhi in tatters on the world stage. Despite massive advantage in numbers and superior war machinery, New Delhi was forced to lick its wounds in the face of Pakistan's stern response. But defense experts believe the warfare has completely changed since then. Lieutenant General retired Abdul Qayyum says in the world of nuclear deterrence, New Delhi has realized the need to change its tactics and has opened new fronts.
They have gone on to hybrid warfare. They don't want the kinetic war, and the conventional war is out. Only limited actions can take place. But now they do it the indirect strategy.
Lieutenant General Qayyum accused India of sponsoring terrorism on Pakistani soil from across the border under its policy of defensive offense.
It's a cyber war, it's an information war, it's a propaganda war, it is a psychological war, it is economic strangulation, and it is terrorism, state terrorism. India has launched from across the border or from the western border, taking Afghanistan as the launching pad.
1965 war veteran Lieutenant General retired Talat Masood says India has turned to economic warfare as a tool against Pakistan to destabilize it.
There has been a fundamental transformation as far as warfare is concerned. The main challenge now is that both are nuclear countries. So it's very difficult to really think in terms of a conventional warfare. Their motive is to bleed Pakistan economically, so that a large number, divisions and forces are deployed on the border.
Defense analysts across the board say while there remains a constant threat of a full-scale war due to the issue of Indian-occupied Kashmir, only a durable and sustainable solution to the outstanding disputes can ensure peace between the neighboring nuclear powers. Reporting for Indus News, Isa Naqvi, Islamabad.
Pakistan is observing National Defence Day to pay tribute to its armed forces for safeguarding Pakistan's sovereignty in the 1965 war. Now, we are joined by defence analyst retired Lieutenant General Amjad Shoaib. Mr. Shoaib, thank you very much for being with us on Indus News. Now, on this day in 1965, even with smaller numbers, Pakistan's armed forces bravely thwarted India's attack. So what do you think were the major causes of the Indian aggression?
See, right from 1947, we have been noticing that India has never reconciled with the creation of Pakistan. And they've always been finding an opportunity to damage or to dismantle the country which was created. They demonstrated their mentality in 1971, where they very actively aided all the separatists in East Pakistan, and then even their Prime Minister has admitted when he was visiting East Pakistan or Bangladesh a few years ago. So naturally, we know the Indian plans and we know the Indian mentality. But all these things are connected with as far as Pakistan is concerned, these things are connected with those outstanding disputes which we have with India. And it is the Indian Indian stubbornness that they don't want to resolve these issues. And that is why today they are even stuck up with China. They have a problem with Nepal. They have a problem with Pakistan, because they have no intention of resolving these issues. So this will continue, and our country will continue facing a threat from the Indians, because provided they have a feeling that ultimately at one point of time, somewhere in the future, they'll be able to dismantle this country, they'll be able to take this country, and ultimately it will be a Khand Bharat. They will have, this Hindutva philosophy which is prevailing on India today. It is primarily based on this Hindu supremacy in the entire continent. So that is what one has to keep in mind, so that we have a realization for the Indian threat, the kind of threat that we are facing. It is not just small territorial threat that we are facing, that India has an eye on some particular point. No, it is absolutely in totality against the existence of Pakistan, the threat that we are facing from India.
Right, and Mr. Amjad, what are the security and stability threats to the region because of New Delhi's continuous cross-border aggression?
The strategic balance in the region has been disturbed because of the American intervention, and that they have their own strategic plans in the region against China, so they are supporting India, and in that process they are selling their high-tech weaponry. All sorts of technology is being given to them. It is for India not to take anything, or they may ultimately turn to Russia. That is their choice. But America is offering everything which they have in the kitty. So that on one hand, there's an arms race. Pakistan, because of the weak economy, cannot catch up. That is an issue with us. On the other hand, that kind of technology is not being made available to Pakistan. Americans will never give it to us. So with the passage of time, the strategic balance is tilting in India's favor in a drastic manner. And that is where this threat is multiplying with every passing day. So we have to be conscious and careful of this threat, which is. And then Indians have also, I think, this fifth generation war, which we have been talking about, Indians perhaps took it very seriously. And they have gone into Afghanistan, they have spent a lot of money there. And from there, they have been trying to create internal problem, instability, and terrorism in Pakistan, which means that the country is weakening from inside. You must have heard, and we have been talking about that Pakistan during this war against terror has lost something like about $150 billion of defense forces. They are committed on both the sides on the western and eastern borders. So the other aspect which they have unleashed and which is going on is to create misunderstandings between the people of Pakistan and the armed forces by through the social media, by throwing some concocted stories, allegations. Smaller army can fight a bigger army if they have full support of their own masses, if they have complete assistance, they get complete assistance from every section of their society. Then I think it is always there is always a chance that the smaller army may be able to defend the country against a bigger army. There was so much of unity amongst the people, and there was so much of enthusiasm to support the armed forces.
Right, thank you, Lieutenant General Amjad Shoaib, for talking to Indus News. Now, Islamabad has summoned a senior Indian diplomat to register a strong protest over ceasefire violations along the line of control. The Foreign Ministry says an unarmed civilian was seriously wounded by India's unprovoked firing in Rakh-Chikri sector. The Foreign Office said Indian forces have been continuously targeting civilian populated areas with artillery fire and heavy caliber mortars. It said the Indian diplomat was told such senseless acts are in clear violation of the 2003 ceasefire understanding. Islamabad has pointed out this year alone India has martyred 17 innocent civilians and wounded 168 in over 2,000 ceasefire violations. Moving on now, the US Special Envoy Zalmay Khalilzad is in Qatar to push for intra-Afghan negotiations. Earlier, the Taliban also said their senior delegation is in Qatar to resolve issues, and a date for the talks will be announced soon. The US State Department said it is time to start the talks as all sides have taken important steps to remove the obstacles. The statement read, Afghan leaders must seize this historic opportunity for peace. Earlier, the Taliban announced that a 21-member team headed by Sheikh Maulavi Abdul Hakim will represent the group at the negotiations. The group's spokesperson Zabihullah Mujahid said Sher Muhammad Abbas Taniksai will be Hakim's deputy. Meanwhile, Afghanistan's National Reconciliation Council Chief Abdullah conditioned the negotiations with a ceasefire. He said the intra-Afghan talks will be carried out in several phases, with Qatar said to be the host for the crucial dialogue. Meanwhile, Kabul says Taliban have killed 2 people in Parvan province, eastern district of Syed Khail. Iran's governor Mohammad Osmaniar said one of the victims was working for the Bagram Intelligence Department, but he said identities of the deceased are not yet to be confirmed. The governor said two militants came on a motorcycle to conduct the assassination and both escaped. The Taliban have not yet commented on this incident. Meanwhile, the International Atomic Energy Agency says Iran is continuing to increase its stockpile of enriched uranium in violation of the 2015 nuclear deal. In a confidential report, the IAEA said the Iran stockpile now stands at over 10 times the agreed limit. The agency said Iran's low-enriched uranium stockpile grew by 533 kilograms to over 2,100 in just over 3 months. The 2015 Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action allows Iran to only keep a stockpile of just over 200 kilograms. The report's release comes after the IAEA officials inspected one of Iran's two former nuclear sites. Iranian President Hassan Rouhani has bemoaned Tehran's friends for not standing up to the United States. In an interview, Rouhani said friends of Iran should have condemned sanctions on Tehran during the coronavirus pandemic. He said that if the US had a bit of humanity, it would have lifted sanctions on Iran for the duration of the health crisis. Rouhani said no one came to Iran's help in its fight against the pandemic. The United States has threatened to impose sanctions on whoever conducts business with Iran. Iran is the worst hit by pandemic in the Middle East, with more than 22,000 deaths. Meanwhile, the Saudi-led coalition forces say they have destroyed an explosive-laden Houthi drone in the Yemeni airspace. Coalition spokesperson Colonel Turki Al-Maliki said the drone was meant to hit civilian settlements in the kingdom. Al-Maliki said the unmanned aerial vehicle was destroyed before it could launch any explosives. The Houthis have not commented on the development yet. Saudi-led military coalition and the rebels are at war since 2015 after Houthis overran much of Yemen, including the capital city of Sana'a. Moving on, Turkey's defense ministry says it has neutralized 320 terrorists in the ongoing Operation Claw Tiger in northern Iraq. In a statement, the ministry said search and screening activities as part of Operation Claw Tiger have been completed in the HOUTHI region. Turkish forces also seized and destroyed weapons, ammunition and other materials from 269 shelters and 53 caves in the region. The operation in the HOUTHI region was launched on June 16th to ensure the safety of the Turkish people and the borders by neutralizing the threat of PKK and other terrorist groups. Ankara claims PKK is responsible for the deaths of some 40,000 people, including women, children and infants. Turkey has warned Greece of painful consequences if it does not enter talks over the eastern Mediterranean Sea. Talking to reporters in Ankara, President Recep Tayyip Erdogan said Turkey has political, economic and military might needed to cast off immoral maps. Erdogan said at every opportunity Ankara expressed its readiness for an equal share as long as it's just and fair. The president said Greece does not recognize Turkey's right. Earlier, Greece pulled out of the NATO-backed talks with Turkey to reduce tensions after Ankara agreed to the dialogue. The two NATO members have been at odds over territorial claims in the resource-rich waters. Mexico says it has recorded nearly 123,000 extra deaths during the pandemic, along with another 67,000 confirmed COVID-19 fatalities. Meanwhile, India has registered more than 90,000 infections overnight, the world's highest single-day surge so far. Globally, the virus has claimed more than 879,000 lives and infected over 26.9 million. More details in this report.
With the US, India and parts of South America already struggling to contain the mass spread of COVID-19, the pandemic has now started gaining strength again in Europe. In the US, Florida state has urged people to remain vigilant over the Labor Day weekend and follow social distancing protocols. In Brazil's Rio de Janeiro, government issued similar warnings as Independence Day weekend sent people to the country's beaches in droves, despite mounting numbers of new infections and deaths.
I'm looking around and I barely see anyone wearing a face mask here. We are not chill about the pandemic, but we go out a little for some recreation. Go out with my daughter and the dog for walks, but we only stay for a little while and we go.
In Italy, rising numbers of deaths and new clusters have the government worried, but thousands gathered in Rome to protest against the mandatory mask wearing in public. Over in Australia too, police and protesters opposing restrictions clashed after an extension in the lockdown in Victoria. The state accounts for 75% of the country's total cases and deaths.
There is only one option, and that is to do this in a series of steady and safe steps. You can't run out of lockdown, because all you're doing is running into a third wave and we'll all be locked up again. I want a Christmas that is as close to normal as possible, and this is the only way. These steps are the only way that we will get to that point.
Meanwhile, in Asia, India's caseload continues to rise as governments find it increasingly hard to contain the spread of the disease. For yet another day, the country recorded over 1,000 deaths in a day, taking the tally to 70,626. Mainland China, with 10 new imported cases, has marked the 21st consecutive day of no cases of local transmission. South Korea's new cases are clustered around the Greater Seoul area, but for a fourth straight day, less than 200 cases have been reported.
Meanwhile, Pakistan's COVID-19 mortality rate continues to drop as the country reported 2 deaths overnight. The Health Ministry says the number of active cases has reduced to 6,269. The ministry said nearly 286,000 patients have recovered across the country. It said new infections rate has also decreased as 484 people tested positive for the virus in the last 24 hours. The ministry said the total number of deaths has reached 6,342, while the number of confirmed cases is over 298,000. More news coming up in this bulletin after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back now. Moving on with the news stories, we move to Israel, where thousands of people continue to protest near Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's residence in Jerusalem. They are calling for Netanyahu's resignation over allegations of corruption and his mishandling of the coronavirus pandemic. Smaller crowds also gathered on bridges and intersections across the country, calling for Netanyahu to step down. The demonstrators say government's ineptness in handling the pandemic has led to soaring unemployment. Police say they have arrested 13 people, while 2 police officers have sustained light injuries during clashes with the protesters. Netanyahu was indicted on charges of bribery, fraud and breach of trust in November last year. In Lebanon, no signs of life have been found after massive rescue efforts continued for 3 days in a building's rubble destroyed in last month's Beirut port explosion. Volunteers team, including experts from Chile, cleared 95% of rubble, but they were unable to find the source of the readings. This dashed the soaring hopes that someone could be rescued alive from under the collapsed building. A specialist sensor equipment detected a pulsing signal under the rubble, giving signs of life earlier on Thursday. The port blast killed about 190 people and left thousands of others injured and missing. Now, in the UK, a number of people have been stabbed in Birmingham city centre in multiple locations after midnight today. The local police have declared it a major incident, signalling serious harm and security risk to the public. West Midlands Police did not give an exact figure or details about the seriousness of the wounded. It said several other stabbings were reported in the area shortly after the first assault, and police believe them to be related. The entire area has been cordoned off, and police say they do not yet have any details about the convict or the motive behind the attack. Police said special arrangements are in place for all of the emergency services to work together. Meanwhile, New York's Attorney General Letitia James says a grand jury will be formed to investigate the death of a black man, Daniel Prude, in police custody. Prude died after being suffocated by Rochester police officers who detained him in a spit hood. In a statement, James said the Prude family and the Rochester community have been through great pain and anguish over his death. She said the Attorney General's office will immediately empanel a grand jury to investigate the matter. The move has been welcomed by Rochester's Mayor Lovely Warren and New York Governor Andrew Cuomo. Protests erupted in Rochester City this week after the Pruitt family released footage from his arrest in March. With this, we come to the end of the bulletin. For the latest updates, you can find us on our social media with Indus.News. Take care.